It's flexible, it's versatile, it doesn't have a single bristle. I present to you In my 20-year journey as an artist, I came across a video online that completely changed how I painted. In 2007, I watched a video of a Russian artist named Leonid Afremov. What made Leonid different from the rest of the artists I was watching at the time was that he painted exclusively with a palette knife. At the time, I was looking for a way to loosen up my style, and the palette knife allowed me to paint with more freedom. Little did I know that this simple concept would inspire my work for years to come. When I started painting with the palette knife, I'd paint the entire canvas using the knife. And I'll tell you, I went through a lot of paint. To be honest, there was too much texture everywhere. My paintings were energetic, but chaotic. What I found out was that if everything was special, nothing was special. Now I reserve the palette knife for either the focal point areas where I want the viewer's eye to go, or to achieve a certain textural technique that can only be created using the palette knife. Here's a few examples. So this painting was done this summer where I've really focused the palette knife on the focal point. There's a few other areas where it's used, but mostly all the texture and the color and knife work is on the focal point. So here's the focal point, but as you can see, the knife isn't too much right there. It's kind of spread around, but the reason I used it everywhere is because I wanted these really cool effects happening. So in the sidewalk here, I was able to achieve that kind of like, I guess artists call it scumble effect, by putting the flat part of the knife right along the set and just run it across the canvas flat edge. Now on the car, I used like 3/4 tilt or whatever, maybe like a butter knife or frosting a cake or something, and that's how I did this car area. And then all the straight lines that you see, they were done with that knife edge. And so like there were a lot of straight edges in this piece, and that was all done with the knife edge, even the words there. During the pandemic, I wanted to add a new texture to my toolbox that was pretty much the opposite of my thick and impasto palette knife work. So I added a thin and drippy wash technique that I refer to as the drippies. I like to put drippies in big and flat areas that would otherwise be kind of boring, and I feel like they add interest to the painting without really taking away attention from the focal point. So here's an example of this. So this painting, I really use these large plain areas to experiment with this glaze technique. So in some of these, I experiment with a very thin wash with a very lean medium, and now this area has a lot of oil in it, so it's a very juicy medium. And I also used a lot of paint, like a thicker wash in it, so it was clumpy. And then down here, it's a very thin wash, but it's a very fat wash also. While both these techniques seem opposites, there's an overarching similarity that I just discovered. They're both about releasing control, letting the technique itself do much of the work, with the end result being spontaneous and fresh. Something that I could never have come up with if I had tried to force it onto the painting. Now, granted, I lose some amount of precision, and I'm okay with that, because in that indecisiveness in my artwork, I, the artist, have left room for you, the viewer, to add your own story.